Happy day before Baylor beats Kansas. This is Locked On Baylor.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor, brought to you by Nissan, the sponsor today. I'm your host, Cam Stewart, and let me just be the first to tell you this. This is March. There is no turning back now, baby. Thank you for making it your first listen today and every day. We are in the greatest month of the year for college basketball fans. And one of the great misconceptions about March Madness is that most of it is played in March. I guess it kind of is, but it doesn't start till like the third or fourth week in March. So it's a little misleading. We still got regular season basketball and a massive one tomorrow at the Foster Pavilion as the Bears seek to get revenge on the number something Kansas Jayhawks, this time at home. Of course, Baylor lost to the Jayhawks just a few weeks ago. That was Waste Management Weekend for those who keep track that way. 64-61 up at the Phog, and something that I think all Baylor fans agreed on was a very winnable game. In fact, we haven't had such a winnable game at the Phog in years, probably since we won there back in 2020. The only win that Baylor's ever had at Phog Allen Fieldhouse. It just looked like Kansas was there for the taking. Baylor did not play particularly well or strong in that game, even though they were on a roll going into it. And still, they were one shot away. They missed a wide open three on the last possession. So, like, it was there for the taking. They were there to be had. And a similar scenario in that no Langston Love for the Bears, probably. We don't know for sure yet, but, day to day, we keep hearing it. I'm going to guess he's probably not going to suit up until the conference tournament, but that is just me. That's no inside sources or anything. That's just a hunch. So still the same situation there. And on the Kansas side, still no Kevin McCullough. He's another one who could be, he is a game time decision, so he could be out on the court on Saturday against the Bears, but he's missed 4 of the last 5 games, and there's just no guarantee that he is going to be out there on the Foster Pavilion floor at noontime on Saturday when this game tips off. And I always find Kansas so interesting because every couple of years they will have a team like this that is a down Kansas team. And honestly, looking over at this team in this season, it makes me want to say this is one of the worst Kansas teams that Bill Self has ever had. And yet they've been in the top 10 all year. They were preseason number 1. They are already 1-0 against Baylor, and they're still a very talented team. Not a great team, not a deep team, but a very good team and a damn talented team. And they are always a threat, right? So I mentioned McCullough's missed 4 of the last 5 games. That one game he did play was an impressive double-digit road victory at Oklahoma. So they are still very capable of winning big 12 games. That said, they have really struggled on the road this year, and they are coming off an absolute stinker against BYU. They got kind of run out of their own building in that game the other night, although they did have a double-digit lead at one point, I think, in the first half. And then BYU just shot the lights out against them, and Kansas didn't really have any answer, and they can't go shot for shot with BYU. And it was the first time in a long time that I've seen fans leaving the Phog early, like at the under 4 timeout in a Big 12 game. It was incredible. So there are plenty of ways to get at this Kansas team. And the more I looked into it, the more I was amazed at not only how many ways there are to get at this team, but how many suit Baylor. Because I look at the numbers and they're not a good 3-point shooting team, Kansas. They have a couple of guys who can, I don't even think they have a couple of guys that can get hot. They're just not a good 3-point shooting team. They are last in the Big 12 in threes made per game. They only make 5 of them. And they are 11th in the Big 12 in 3-point percentage. They shoot it at just about 31%. which is not terrific. Baylor's upwards of 36% now. And so they don't shoot the three well. Their point guard can't shoot, DeJuan Harris, who's a terrific ball mover. They're still one of the best ball movement teams in the country, but he can't shoot. And last game, it bit them again. BYU could. They shot 7 of 15 in the second half alone, whereas Kansas was only 3 of 15 from beyond the arc the whole game. So in today's college basketball, that is not a good sign when you can't shoot the three really at all. And that's bad enough. But then when you look at Kansas numbers, you find out they can't really defend the three either. They're 12th in the conference in opponent three-point field goal percentage. Opponents are shooting 35% against them. So already that is playing right into Baylor's hands because they're a good three-point shooting team and they're playing at home. We talk about how much defense travels because shooting typically does not. You are a better shooting team at home than you are on the road. And I don't know the numbers. They're not right in front of me, but certainly that feels like the case for Baylor as well. And they're facing a team that doesn't defend the perimeter very well. And we have seen this offense when they can really space the floor. I mean, truly do a 5 out and kill you from beyond the 3-point arc. This is a chance to do that. And then obviously Kansas not making a lot of threes. I talked about this at length in yesterday's show. Kansas not making a lot of threes plays exactly into Baylor's hands defensively. I mean, obviously that's a great sign, right? But Baylor has done so well this year in the zone. I laid it all out yesterday, how good their numbers have been in the zone when they are forcing teams to pull it from the outside. That's exactly what they're going to do against Kansas tomorrow. That is exactly what they are going to do against Kansas. And by the way, the Jayhawks do have an inside game. Hunter Dickinson, obviously, at 7-1, 7-2, whatever he is, and potential, national player of the year at the beginning of the season. Like, he can score inside and out as well. But he's about the only guy who can do that when McCullough's not in the lineup. And so you can neutralize him like you kind of did last game. I've talked about this before. I think he had 15 points for the game, and 13 of them were in the first 13 minutes. So that is, they can get after you there. And Baylor's zone defense, when they're forcing teams to shoot from the outside, has been absolutely deadly. I went over the numbers yesterday. I'm going to do it one more time because I have them in front of me. Why not? In the 3 games in the last month that they have gone primarily zone defense, TCU, Oklahoma, Cincinnati, so month and a half there, all wins, okay? But in those 3 games, teams are shooting 39% from the floor, 26% from 3. They're actually forcing more turnovers by 1 than the Bears. So the Bears are still giving it up a lot. And the Baylor is +9 on the boards in those games. Now, there are important stats in there because last time, the real reason Baylor lost the game was they coughed the ball up 21 times, the most of the season. That's why they lost the game. And their most impressive stat, I think, in that Kansas loss was they were +17 on the boards. You talk about neutralizing the inside game. They absolutely did do that the first time. It's kind of easier said than done to do it twice in the same season, but they did absolutely do that. It was a weird stat line. Kansas was +8 points in the paint, but Baylor was +17 on the boards. So obviously you feel you can get some more scoring inside. You can force them to the outside. And I think that plays right into the hands of a Baylor victory. And we were all confident after that loss to Kansas that when the Jayhawks came to Waco that you would really like their chances. And now as Kansas' season has unraveled a little bit and Baylor's playing stronger defensively, even stronger than when they then you're starting to feel really good about how this plays into Baylor's hands. And look, I don't want to ever get too confident against the Kansas Jayhawks. That's just the Baylor fan in me. But guys, this is not as bad a matchup as it has been in the past. And it took me, almost 10 minutes to say this, but it is worth mentioning. The Bears have won the last 3 matchups between these two teams in Waco. How about something new for you? Today's episode is brought to you by our pals over at Nissan, a new sponsor for Locked On Baylor. Thank you for joining on, Nissan. And let me ask you this. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things just a little bit further? You ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Well, our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level, starting with the 2024 Nissan Rogue. It is perfect for those city drives and the great escapes, like Steve McQueen. Class exclusive Google built-in is always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. So gone are the days of connecting your phone, okay? Google Assistant, Google Maps, Google Play Store, all built in right to the HD touchscreen infotainment system. And it is a perfect car for a mid-size crossover for that next adventure. Maybe you're looking for something even bigger, like the Nissan Pathfinder. It has room for up to 8, expansive cargo room, and advanced available 4x4 capability, and with 284 horsepower and up to 6,000 pounds of towing. When adventure calls, the Pathfinder is there to answer. So take the Rogue, take the Pathfinder, maybe even the Nissan Armada, and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. I'm just so into March, aren't we all? Like we're so ready for March Madness to come around. Look, it's going to take a miracle for Baylor to win the regular season conference championship. They don't play their best basketball in Kansas City for the conference tournament. So we as Baylor fans are more or less looking towards the NCAA tournament, especially after this Kansas game and after playing UT one last time. So I'm in. It's Joe Lunardi season. It's Joe Lunardi Christmas, truly. And so looking at the bracketology, this week was the first time that I have looked at it, and I am ready to break it down for you guys. Okay. So right now, Baylor is headed up to Matt Linnell's hometown. Spokane, Washington is where they are headed, according to Joe Lunardi. Of course, that is for the Midwest region, right? Not the West. In the Western time zone. It's one of the easternmost points in Washington, but it is in Washington State. But it is for the Midwest region, which the Elite 8 and Sweet 16 are in Detroit for that one. And right now, Baylor at the 4 seed in that, and they will be taking on one of my favorite teams in the tournament. That would be the Vermont Catamounts, who they are picking to be the automatic qualifier in the 13. Don't take that to heart. Okay, because those teen seeds, those are for whoever wins their conference tournament, and then they seed them from there. So it could well not be Vermont, but wouldn't that be fun? A couple of green and gold teams, the Catamounts of Vermont. So this is an really interesting bracket for me, this Midwest region. So what's funny is you hope Baylor holds on to a 4 or better, because you don't want them as a 5 seed, right? That is the kiss of death. The 12 over 5 is just automatic money when it comes to tournament time. And right above them at the number 5 seed, the Washington State Cougars. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm not going to call out that they're a 5 seed, because I have not watched Washington State once this year. I have no idea. That conference is dead and it's stupid for basketball. But Washington State right now is the 5 seed taking on Samford, again, one of those AQs. So don't get married to that idea. But what interests me is Washington State, a 5 seed who probably won't be in the rankings all season long, is going to play in this bracketology, which Joe Lunardi is pretty good at. They would play their first round game an hour and a half, 87 minutes from their home court. Like, are you kidding? It's going to be almost 3 times that for Baylor to fly to this place, and they had a better season. And by the way, it's not any better for the seeds ranked ahead of Baylor, because the 1 seed is Purdue out of Indianapolis. And they don't, for some reason, there's not one, first round games in Chicago, sorry. That was really stupid. The first round for them is in Indianapolis. Let's move on. That was really stupid. I've said it before. It doesn't take a lot for me to look stupid. I was looking at this wrong. Baylor would still be in Spokane. Those sites are Indianapolis, Memphis, and Spokane, in case you were wondering. And it's too bad that Baylor wouldn't play in the Indianapolis site, because we play pretty good there in March and April. Anyway, so the seeds ahead of them, 1 seed is Purdue. The 2 seed is Marquette, which I don't love. And the 3 seed is Alabama. Now, I love seeing 2 of those there. Purdue, you are chokers until you don't choke. Until you prove me wrong, because I was way in on the Purdue train last year, and I was bitten in the butt right away. So until you can prove that you're not going to choke, we're going to assume that you are going to choke. Now, that said, that they might still get to the Sweet 16, and that would be the Baylor matchup, 1 versus 4. Marquette, I remember last year, and I know it's a different Baylor team. I don't want to see Marquette again. I don't. They out-physicaled the crap out of Baylor last year. Kolek killed us, whether he can read or not. Tyler Kolek ripped us apart and probably would do again. And I just don't want to deal with that at all. 3 seed Alabama, good team, good players, terrible defense. Terrible defense. Baylor would rip that defense to shreds. It'd be tough to keep up with the offense that the Tide have, but they would do some serious damage against that porous defense. So honestly, I would like a matchup against Alabama. I'd like Baylor in that. I wouldn't love Marquette, and I'm like 50-50 on Purdue. And so, how many 4 seeds can say that about the 3 teams ahead of them, that they feel pretty good about 2 of the 3 of them? That's, famous last words, but not a lot of teams can say that. By the way, there is another Big 12 team in this bracket. Tech is the 7 seed, and they would actually play up in Indianapolis, if you're believing Joe Lunardi. Looking at some of the other Big 12 teams here, because I'm just interested in this. TCU is an 8 seed up in LA. That's where Arizona is the 1, so that would be their second round matchup. They're facing our pals, 8-9 matchup, Michigan State. So I told you Michigan State was still going to be a tournament team. I thought they'd be a little bit better. I'm not going to lie. But the 2 seed in that is Kansas. So we're back to the Big 12. 3 seed is our pals at Duke. So that's where, and by the way, sorry. So Kansas is the 2 in that. And they would face the winner of the 7-10 matchup, which is 7-seeded Utah State versus another Big 12 team for the last time, the Texas Longhorns. So wouldn't that be interesting? Kansas, Texas. Jayhawks just kicked the crud out of them a couple of games ago. Houston would be the number 1 seed in the South region. No surprise there. So they would play first in Memphis, but that goes to Dallas for the Sweet 16 Elite 8. No other Big 12 teams in that one, but I think the best 2 seed is in that bracket, which is Tennessee. And then the East region, which has UConn as the number 1 seed, they could be facing the 8 seed Oklahoma Sooners in the second round if OU is able to beat Chris Collins' Northwestern Wildcats. Our pals over at Auburn are the 4 seed. Baylor's already beaten them this year. And this is the Big 12 region. You already had Oklahoma. You've got Iowa State as the 3 seed, and you have got BYU as the 7 seed playing up in Charlotte, which means North Carolina is the 2 seed in that one. Winners go to Boston. Anyway, that's your quick look around at that. Baylor as a 4 seed seems right for now. I think they are a couple big wins from being a 3 seed, and I mean that could make a big difference. I don't know. It could change their region. As a matter of fact, they might be able to get that South 3 seed, depending on whether they think they're been better than Creighton, the team that knocked Baylor out last year. But we'll see. We're not worrying about that, where they're going just yet. But I did love to see who they're projected to play, how that could go in that region that they're in right now. Seton Hall could potentially be in there too, a team that Baylor has beaten this year. Right now, Lunardi has them as a play-in team against Virginia. UVA was like receiving votes and in the rankings not that long ago, and now they're playing as a play-in team. Anyway, where do you want to see Baylor? I know we're a couple weeks away from it, but where do you want to see Baylor? Who would you like to see as the 1 seed? Who do you have confidence against? Because I had a ton of confidence that they could beat the 1 seed, Alabama, last year, but they didn't get close to it. So anyway, here's to hoping this year. And when that time is almost upon us, you start thinking about, getting involved in the game and gambling a little bit more. Well, you don't even have to wait until March Madness, because we have plenty of great NBA bets over at FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. You can bet on all your favorite NBA teams and players with quick bets, same game parlays, exclusive props, over under on Jeremy Sohan, all the time. Just visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to shoot your shot. That's FanDuel.com/locked-on, LOCKEDON, to shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. So we talked about college basketball season, postseason a little bit, but we're always focused on the ever-changing world of the college football postseason and how that is going to look. Well, you got even more news yesterday. Now, this isn't official, but it's been rumored, and it's coming from Ross Dellinger, who is very, very good and trusted on these things. So I'm going to pull from this article that he wrote for Yahoo Sports, and that is basically showing that you've heard about the proposed new model to an expanded college football playoff, not from 12, but to a 14-team field. And the one that was circulated amongst the schools are this one that we heard about yesterday, which would ensure that the champions of the SEC and the Big Ten would hold exclusive rights on the 2 first-round buys. So with this 14 team, there will be 2 teams that have 2 buys rather than just the one that you see from the top 5 or 4 teams in this 12-team playoff. And in this one that's being circulated, those 2 bye teams, no matter what, will be the champions of the SEC and the Big Ten. I don't want to be just another guy who's sitting here and talking about how college football is dying and it's just no good for anybody anymore unless you're one of 5 or 6 teams. But it is certainly looking that way. I mean, I knew this was going to happen. A lot of you knew this was going to happen too, that the expanded playoffs in theory is great because you get more opportunities, more seats at the table, which at the end of the day is still true for sure. It's better than 4. But I think what you're going to start to see is it's more opportunities for Big Ten, SEC teams. This year, I don't know that you would have saw a Liberty in there instead of an Ole Miss or a Penn State. That's what it's paving the way for. It's not the Liberties or the Tulanes or the Coastal Carolinas from a few years ago or the UCFs from a few years ago when they weren't in a major conference, or SMU some year like this year as the American Conference champions. It's for teams that aren't quite there in those 2 major conferences. I'm talking about Ole Miss. I'm talking about Penn State. I'm talking about Iowa. I'm talking about Tennessee, Florida, if they ever get back. Those are the teams we're talking about. Those are the teams that are getting the opportunity that are so coveted amongst these other teams. Oregon would have got in there as a good Pac-12 team. But, it's not paving the way like we thought it would for a team like an Oklahoma State that was in the mid-teens, got blown out in the Big 12 championship game. But in a 12-team playoff, you're like, well, that's a finalist in a top 4 conference. How much of a shake do they get? And what this is showing you is that they would not. They would not. Or a Louisville who had a good year. And you look at the projections, and last year it would have Oklahoma State, it would have Louisville, it would have Arizona, it would have Oregon State or Missouri. Well, Missouri, I'm going to exclude from this one because I forgot they are in the SEC. But those teams realistically aren't going to show up even in the model if it came up this year. I'm telling you, they would have pushed for an Ole Miss to be in there instead of an Oregon State or an Oklahoma State. It's no surprise. It's an unfair game. And it sucks, man, because in theory, and this could very well happen, there are going to be teams that are better than those conference champions that should be ranked higher and will not be in there. I'll use this year as an example. Obviously, Texas is going to be in the SEC, but Texas was better than Alabama. They beat them head to head, and they had a better overall season than Bama. Not saying Bama shouldn't have been in the playoff, but they were the SEC champion. So why do they get a second bye and Texas doesn't? That doesn't make any sense. Or Washington, who will be in the Big Ten, but not this year. Why? Why would they get that? And that's not as uncommon as you think. Michigan deserved to be the 1 seed as the Big Ten champion. But some year they're not going to be deserving of 2 byes. And this year, Alabama was not. But under this, they are going to have those exclusive rights, which just sucks, man. It just sucks. And I hate even talking about the college football playoff because we all know where it's going. And I'm more intrigued to see what these other conferences like the Big 12 will do somewhere down the line that's outside of those top 2, whether it's, scheduling agreements and loose definition of a conference. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, at this point, they are just trying to make the CFP national championship game the champions of the SEC versus the champions of the Big Ten. And at that rate, we should just go back to, if that's what it's going to be, we should just go back to the BCS system and, have the tie-in for the Rose Bowl, since there'll be no Pac-12, just have it be SEC champion, Big Ten champion, have them play each other every year. And if one of them if they're 1 and 2, or if number 1 wins, make them the national champion like you used to do even before the BCS. Let's just do it like that. Put some more credence in these bowl games, these other bowl games. The Cotton Bowl becomes bigger again, the Orange Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, all that. And we can have them do their little invitational, and all the rest of us, good folk of college football lore, will worry about each other. Might not be a popular opinion, but honestly, I'd rather take that at this point. Anyway, let me know what you think about that in the college football playoff. Let me know what you think about Baylor and the bracketology, and whether they will beat Kansas tomorrow at the Foster. And if you do believe that, drop the score predictions down in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe. Tell your friends about it. We will be back with a post game tomorrow on your favorite show, which is, of course, Locked On